A U.S. Marine found a German Shepherd puppy frozen beside an abandoned gate. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. He wasn't supposed to survive. Not on a night when the cold moved like a quiet hunter across the Montana backroads, frosting over every forgotten fence post and turning the abandoned gate into a pale silhouette against the moon. The wind carried a thin whistle, brushing over metal gone dull with rust, and at the base of that gate lay something so small it could have been mistaken for a fallen glove. But it wasn't a glove. It was a German Shepherd puppy, curled tight, frozen into the earth. His tiny body barely rose with breath, his fur stiff with frost, his eyes shut as if winter itself had pressed them closed. The snow around him was untouched, no footprints, no tire marks, no sign that anyone had cared enough to stay. The world had simply moved on without him. Until headlights cut across the darkness. Sergeant Noah Carter was driving home from a late shift, his Jeep humming low along the narrow road, tires crunching through patches of ice. He wasn't looking for anything except a warm bed and a few hours of quiet, but fate rarely asks permission before placing a miracle in a man's path. The beam of his headlights swept past the old gate, then snapped back as if caught by an unseen hand. Noah slowed. Something felt wrong, an instinct honed by years of listening to silences most people never notice. He pulled over, stepped out, and the cold bit instantly through his jacket. The air smelled of iron and pine, sharp enough to sting the lungs. When he approached the gate, he saw the small mound of fur trembling in the faint glow. A shape too still for comfort, too fragile for the night. Noah knelt slowly, the snow crunching beneath his knee. His breath drifted over the puppy like a thin cloud of warmth. One touch told him everything. The little body was ice cold, stiff at the edges, clinging to the last threads of life. "Hey, buddy," Noah whispered, voice barely a breath. "I've got you." No one else was there to notice the moment a Marine's hands lifted the tiniest spark of life from the winter ground. No one heard the soft, nearly silent sound the puppy made, a sound so faint it could have been imagination. But Noah heard it. And in that fragile sound, in the hush of a frozen night, something sacred stirred. A story that shouldn't have begun, but now refused to end. Noah held the puppy against his chest as he hurried back to the Jeep, feeling the fragile rise and fall of each breath, so faint it seemed the night itself might swallow it. The cold clung to the little body like a second layer of ice, and for a moment Noah feared he had arrived only in time to witness the final flicker of life. But then the puppy stirred, barely, a small tremor against the fabric of his jacket, and that was enough to push Noah into motion. The heater blasted warm air the moment he started the engine, fogging the windshield with a soft haze. He tucked the puppy inside his coat, letting his own body heat cradle the tiny creature. Snowflakes drifted across the headlights as the Jeep rolled back onto the narrow road, turning the world outside into a swirl of white and silence. Noah kept one hand on the wheel and the other gently cupped around the puppy's back, steady and careful. He could not warm him fast, only consistently, the way his training had once taught him to coax warmth into a wounded comrade's hands during night watches overseas. Slow, steady, patient. "Stay with me, little guy," he whispered, the words barely audible beneath the hum of the engine. The puppy did not respond, but Noah felt a faint pulse, like a soft tap beneath his fingertips, as if the small heart was knocking from far away, asking for one more chance. The town lights of Helena glimmered in the distance, a muted glow through drifting snow. As Noah reached the outskirts, he drove toward the small 24-hour veterinary clinic he remembered passing on late shifts. The sign flickered weakly as he pulled in, its pale glow reflecting across the icy parking lot. He stepped out carefully, keeping the puppy close, shielding him from the wind. The glass door chimed softly as he entered, releasing a warm draft that smelled faintly of cedar shavings and disinfectant. The night receptionist looked up, startled, then softened when she saw the bundle in Noah's arms. "Hypothermia?" she asked quietly. Noah nodded. "Severe." A veterinarian emerged from the back, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and steady hands. She motioned to a small examination table, and Noah laid the puppy down gently. The doctor touched the little body with the kind of caution reserved for things that could slip away without warning. She adjusted a heating pad, wrapped the puppy in warm towels, and monitored his shallow breaths. "He is very cold," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "But he is trying." Noah watched every movement, his jaw tensing when the puppy's breathing hitched. The room hummed softly with the heater and the rhythmic click of instruments warming up. Minutes felt like miles. The doctor placed a hand on Noah's arm, grounding him. "You got him here in time," she said. "Barely. But time is still time." Noah did not speak. He simply kept his eyes on the puppy, listening for each small breath, willing them to keep coming, one after another, fragile but real, like little footprints in fresh snow refusing to disappear. The minutes stretched into a quiet tension, the kind that makes every breath feel heavier than it should. The small examination room carried a gentle warmth now, soft and steady, wrapping itself around the puppy like an invisible blanket. Frost still lay motionless under the towels, his tiny chest rising just enough to keep hope from slipping away. Noah stood close, arms folded loosely, not out of impatience but out of a quiet need to stay anchored. His eyes followed each subtle movement, the flutter of a whisker, the faint twitch in a paw. The doctor adjusted the warming pad and checked the puppy's temperature again, her expression softening just a little. "He is responding," she murmured. "Slowly, but he is responding." Noah exhaled, a breath he did not realize he had been holding. The storm outside brushed against the clinic windows, a low hum that felt distant compared to the small fight happening on the table. Frost let out a faint exhale, almost like a sigh from somewhere deep inside, and Noah leaned in closer. "You keep doing that," he whispered gently. "You breathe, and I will stay right here." The doctor stepped away to prepare electrolyte fluids, leaving Noah alone with the little life he had carried out of the snow. In the soft glow of the overhead lamp, the frost on the puppy's fur had melted into tiny beads of water, clinging to each strand like morning dew. Noah reached out and brushed a drop away with the back of his finger, barely touching him, not wanting to overwhelm such fragile warmth. Memories surfaced uninvited, the kind he usually kept locked behind a quieter expression. Nights overseas when he sat beside a fellow Marine who had gone still from exhaustion and cold, urging them to keep their eyes open, telling them stories about home just to remind them that the world was still waiting. It felt strangely familiar, this moment, though the life in front of him was small enough to fit in his hands. The doctor returned and began setting up the fluids with careful efficiency. "He has a chance," she said softly. "But the next hour matters the most." Noah nodded, keeping his eyes on Frost. The puppy's breaths came steadier now, each one a fragile promise. The warmth in the room deepened, not from the heaters, but from the quiet determination of every soul within it. The lights flickered once as the wind outside grew stronger, but the room stayed steady, grounding them. Noah placed his hand gently beside the puppy, not touching him this time, simply offering presence. Frost shifted, so slightly it might have been imagined, but Noah saw it. A tiny movement toward the warmth of his hand. A choice, faint but unmistakable. It was enough to send a soft ache through Noah's chest. Hope, small as a snowflake, but real. Frost was not giving up. And neither was he. The hour slipped past slowly, quiet as a held breath, and the warmth in the small examination room deepened until it felt like a soft cocoon wrapping itself around the table where Frost lay. The doctor had stepped out to update a chart, leaving Noah alone again with the puppy, the glow from the heating pad casting a faint halo along the edge of the towels. Frost's breaths came a little steadier now, small but rhythmic, as if he were borrowing strength from the gentleness of the room. Noah pulled a chair closer, sitting with his elbows resting loosely on his knees, his hands clasped as if holding onto an invisible thread. The soft hum of the heater filled the space, soothing, almost like a lullaby hummed under one's breath. Frost shifted again, a subtle movement, barely more than a whisper of motion beneath the towels. Noah watched carefully, his chest tightening at the sight, hope rising with each tiny adjustment of the small body. "You are fighting," he murmured softly. "Good. Keep going." Outside, snow tapped lightly against the windows, soft as fingertips, while distant headlights passed by in slow, muted streaks, unaware of the little battle unfolding in this warm pocket of the night. The clinic smelled faintly of cedar shavings and coffee that had been brewed too long, grounding the moment with the kind of stillness that felt almost sacred. The doctor returned with a small bottle of warmed fluids and checked Frost's temperature again, her expression shifting from caution to something gentler. "He is improving," she said. "Not out of danger, but improving." Noah nodded, feeling the words settle inside him like a steadying stone. Frost's eyelids fluttered once, as if testing the idea of waking. Not fully, not yet, but enough to show the world he was still choosing to stay. Noah leaned in, resting a hand near the puppy's paw without touching him, offering quiet presence rather than pressure. Frost's tiny paw twitched, inching the smallest bit toward the warmth of Noah's hand. A simple gesture, but one that felt like a soft beam of light breaking into cold shadows. "There you go," Noah whispered. "You are not alone anymore." The doctor adjusted the towels, adding a fresh layer of warmth, and dimmed the overhead light to let the little body rest more comfortably. Frost's breathing deepened slightly, slow and even, a fragile rhythm that felt like a promise being written in the hush of the room. The storm outside settled into a gentler snowfall, flakes drifting lazily in the clinic's exterior lights, turning the night into a soft blur of white. Inside, time moved differently, stretching with each inhale Frost managed to take, each exhale Noah quietly counted. The room felt warmer now, not just from the heater, but from something quieter and deeper, the kind of warmth that grows when one soul refuses to let another slip away. Frost was still fighting. And Noah, steady and patient, stayed right beside him, breathing with him, willing the tiny spark of life to keep glowing through the night. The hour slipped past slowly, quiet as a held breath, and the warmth in the small examination room deepened until it felt like a soft cocoon wrapping itself around the table where Frost lay. The doctor had stepped out to update a chart, leaving Noah alone again with the puppy, the glow from the heating pad casting a faint halo along the edge of the towels. Frost's breaths came a little steadier now, small but rhythmic, as if he were borrowing strength from the gentleness of the room. Noah pulled a chair closer, sitting with his elbows resting loosely on his knees, his hands clasped as if holding onto an invisible thread. The soft hum of the heater filled the space, soothing, almost like a lullaby hummed under one's breath. Frost shifted again, a subtle movement, barely more than a whisper of motion beneath the towels. Noah watched carefully, his chest tightening at the sight, hope rising with each tiny adjustment of the small body. "You are fighting," he murmured softly. "Good. Keep going." Outside, snow tapped lightly against the windows, soft as fingertips, while distant headlights passed by in slow, muted streaks, unaware of the little battle unfolding in this warm pocket of the night. The clinic smelled faintly of cedar shavings and coffee that had been brewed too long, grounding the moment with the kind of stillness that felt almost sacred. The doctor returned with a small bottle of warmed fluids and checked Frost's temperature again, her expression shifting from caution to something gentler. "He is improving," she said. "Not out of danger, but improving." Noah nodded, feeling the words settle inside him like a steadying stone. Frost's eyelids fluttered once, as if testing the idea of waking. Not fully, not yet, but enough to show the world he was still choosing to stay. Noah leaned in, resting a hand near the puppy's paw without touching him, offering quiet presence rather than pressure. Frost's tiny paw twitched, inching the smallest bit toward the warmth of Noah's hand. A simple gesture, but one that felt like a soft beam of light breaking into cold shadows. "There you go," Noah whispered. "You are not alone anymore." The doctor adjusted the towels, adding a fresh layer of warmth, and dimmed the overhead light to let the little body rest more comfortably. Frost's breathing deepened slightly, slow and even, a fragile rhythm that felt like a promise being written in the hush of the room. The storm outside settled into a gentler snowfall, flakes drifting lazily in the clinic's exterior lights, turning the night into a soft blur of white. Inside, time moved differently, stretching with each inhale Frost managed to take, each exhale Noah quietly counted. The room felt warmer now, not just from the heater, but from something quieter and deeper, the kind of warmth that grows when one soul refuses to let another slip away. Frost was still fighting. And Noah, steady and patient, stayed right beside him, breathing with him, willing the tiny spark of life to keep glowing through the night. The storm had weakened to a gentle whisper by the time dawn crept across the horizon, brushing the clinic windows with a pale, uncertain light. Inside, the world felt smaller, quieter, held together by the fragile rhythm of Frost's breathing and the steady hum of the warming unit. Noah had not moved far from the examination table. He sat with his shoulders slightly rounded forward, exhaustion tugging at him, but he refused to close his eyes. Frost's small body, wrapped in soft towels, had gained a warmer tone, no longer the grayish tint of something slipping away. His breath still came shallow, but with a steadiness that had not been there earlier. The doctor stepped in again, her steps soft against the linoleum floor, carrying a fresh set of heated compresses. "He is stabilizing," she said gently, as if raising her voice might disturb the delicate thread of life pulling Frost back from the edge. "This is the part where we wait and let his body decide." Noah nodded, the quiet weight of the night pushing gently against him. He reached out, placing his hand near Frost again, fingers relaxed, palm open. Frost shifted toward the warmth, his tiny paw brushing Noah's skin before settling in a loose curl. The contact was feather-light, but it felt like an anchor dropping into his chest, steadying something deep inside him. Outside the window, the sky opened into soft streaks of yellow and rose, glinting off patches of lingering frost. The cold light crept across the room slowly, touching the edges of the equipment, warming the corners where shadows had gathered through the night. The doctor adjusted the fluids and checked the puppy's temperature again, her expression thoughtful but no longer guarded. "He is fighting harder than I expected," she murmured. "Most puppies this cold lose their reflex to respond. But he reaches for your hand every time." Noah glanced at Frost, who twitched again, a soft movement of his nose against the towel as if searching for something familiar. "He is tougher than he looks," Noah said quietly. The doctor gave a small smile. "Sometimes the smallest ones surprise us the most." Frost's breathing hitched once, sharp enough to pull Noah forward in concern, but then settled again, deeper this time, as though he had finally found a rhythm he could sustain. It was fragile, yes, but it was real. Noah exhaled slowly, letting the tension ease from his shoulders. The puppy's eyelids fluttered, not fully opening, but quivering with the promise of something close to waking. "Easy, little guy," Noah murmured. "Take your time." The pup responded with the faintest hum of breath, a soft tremor that felt almost like recognition. The doctor watched, her eyes warming. "He knows you are here," she said. "That matters more than people realize." As the first true rays of sunlight settled on the examination table, Frost made a small sound, a gentle whimper that rose and fell like a note carried on morning air. It was not distress. It was effort. Life pushing forward. Noah sat a little straighter, his eyes fixed on the tiny creature fighting so quietly, so completely, to stay in the world. Frost was not out of danger. Not yet. But something in the room shifted, a feeling as subtle as warmth spreading through cold fingers. Hope, small and steady, took root in the silence. And Noah, still keeping vigil, let himself believe in it. The next moments unfolded in a hush so fragile that even the soft hum of the clinic lights seemed careful not to intrude. Frost's tiny breath steadied into a quiet rhythm, each inhale a little deeper than the last, as if the warmth of the morning sun had slipped beneath the towel and settled into his bones. Noah stayed close, sitting with one hand resting near the edge of the table. Not touching Frost, simply offering the steady presence that had carried them through the long night. The doctor checked the monitors, her brow smoothing with cautious relief. "He is warming up from the inside now," she whispered, adjusting the towel around the puppy's neck. "That usually means the body has decided to keep fighting." Noah let out a slow breath. "Good," he murmured. "You keep choosing that, little guy." Frost let out a small, uneven sound, not quite a whimper, not quite a sigh. It trembled through the room like a fragile spark. Noah leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hear you." Outside the window, the sky shifted again, trading pale washes of pink for the gold of a rising sun. The light spilled across the counter, across the doctor's clipboard, across Frost's tiny face. It caught on the soft fur around his muzzle, turning the moisture there into a faint shimmer. For the first time, his eyelids fluttered open, thin slivers of amber peeking through like distant lanterns. The doctor froze, watching. Noah's breath hitched in his chest. Frost did not lift his head, but he searched the air slowly, his nose twitching as if following a scent only he recognized. His gaze steadied on the space where Noah's hand lay. Noah moved slightly, just enough for the puppy to see him clearly. "Hey," he whispered. "I am right here." Frost blinked slowly, then in the smallest gesture imaginable, nudged his nose forward, barely brushing the back of Noah's fingers. It was not strong. It was not confident. But it was deliberate. A choice. The doctor's face softened with something almost reverent. "That," she said quietly, "is a very good sign." Frost's eyes drifted closed again, but his breathing stayed even, guided by the steady warmth filling the room. Noah stayed where he was, unmoving, knowing instinctively that this moment was not meant to be disturbed. Outside, the frost on the window had begun to melt into clear beads that slid slowly down the glass, catching the sunlight like tiny drops of gold. The storm had passed. The night had loosened its grip. And in the middle of a small Montana clinic, a puppy who should not have survived found just enough strength to say, in the only way he could, that he was still here. Noah lowered his head for a moment, letting the quiet settle deep into his chest. Frost was not just fighting. He was reaching. And something inside Noah reached back, steady and sure, like a vow made without words. The morning settled into a deeper stillness, the kind that follows long nights of uncertainty, when hope begins to breathe again but is still too delicate to name aloud. The clinic lights had softened to a warm glow, and the rising sun cast gentle golden edges across the countertop where Frost rested. His tiny body, once rigid with cold, now sank more comfortably into the layered towels, his breath steady enough to let the room exhale with him. The doctor finished checking his temperature and stepped back with a thoughtful expression, her hands folded lightly in front of her. "He is not out of the woods," she said softly, "but this looks like the turning point." Noah nodded, though his eyes never left Frost. Something in him had learned not to trust relief too quickly, but he also knew when to honor the quiet moments that felt like answered prayers. Frost stirred, a small shift of his paws as if testing the boundaries of his own strength. His eyelids fluttered again, slower this time, more intentional. Noah leaned forward, resting one hand on the table, close enough that the little puppy could sense it but not close enough to overwhelm. Frost's nose twitched, catching the faint scent of the man who had lifted him from the ice hours earlier. He let out a soft exhale and nudged forward, pressing his muzzle into the curve of Noah's fingers. The gesture was tiny, almost weightless, but it carried the gravity of a life choosing to stay. Noah felt his throat tighten. "That is it," he whispered. "You keep doing that." Frost's breathing deepened, each inhale a little stronger, his small chest rising with more purpose than before. The doctor watched quietly, giving them space. The heater hummed, filling the silence with a warm, steady backdrop. Outside, a faint sparkle traced along the windows as the last remnants of frost began to melt under the morning light. It was then that Frost's strength flickered, a sudden stillness that made Noah straighten, his heart lodging in his throat. Frost's breath slowed, not dangerously, but enough to feel like a step backward. His body relaxed too much, the kind of limpness that had once signaled defeat. Noah hovered close, voice low and steady. "I am right here," he said. "Do not drift too far." For a moment, the room held its breath. Frost lay motionless, eyes closed, limbs heavy. Even the doctor paused, listening to the soft beeps and the faint rhythm of a pulse trying to find its way. And then, in the smallest act of defiance against the cold that had claimed him hours earlier, Frost let out a low, fragile whine. Just one. Thin as a thread, but unmistakably alive. Noah closed his eyes, relief loosening the tightness in his chest. The doctor let out a quiet exhale. "He scared us," she murmured. Frost shifted again, nudging his head toward Noah's hand as if seeking reassurance in the only warmth that had stayed with him through the darkest hours. Noah brushed a fingertip gently along the tiny arc of Frost's ear. "You are still here," he whispered. "Good." Outside, the last frost melted into clear rivulets on the glass, tracing the morning in quiet lines of light. Inside, a puppy who should not have survived found the strength to hold on, clinging to the steady presence of the Marine beside him, refusing to slip away into the silence he had just escaped. For a long, suspended moment, the room held its breath with Frost. His fragile body lay still beneath the soft layers of towels, the rise and fall of his chest so delicate that Noah had to watch for several seconds before trusting what he saw. The doctor remained nearby, hands lightly resting on the edge of the counter, her posture steady but quiet, as if acknowledging that this moment belonged more to the two souls on the table than to medicine itself. A ray of morning sunlight slipped through the window, scattering across Frost's fur in a faint shimmer. The air carried a gentle warmth now, the kind that feels earned, not given. Frost exhaled, long and slow, as if letting go of something heavy, and his small body relaxed into the heat of the towels. Noah leaned closer, sensing a shift he could not name yet, but felt deep in his chest. "Easy," he whispered. "You are doing just fine." The puppy's eyes fluttered once, then again, each movement a hesitant invitation back into the world. His lashes trembled, catching the warm light, and then, with an effort Noah could almost feel in his own bones, Frost lifted his head by a fraction. Not fully. Not strong. But enough. The doctor stepped forward quickly, scanning the monitors. "Look at that," she murmured, her tone soft with something between disbelief and gratitude. "That is a major improvement." Frost blinked, his amber eyes unfocused at first, sweeping across the room in slow, searching arcs. His breathing deepened, steadier than before, though still laced with the fragility of a life reclaiming itself one heartbeat at a time. Noah offered his hand, palm open, a silent bridge between them. Frost saw the movement. His gaze sharpened, just slightly. He pushed his nose forward, wobbling, and pressed it into Noah's palm with a small, determined nudge. The contact was warm now, not icy and brittle like it had been on the winter ground. It carried intention. It carried trust. Noah felt something settle inside him, a quiet release of tension held through the long night. "There you go," he whispered. "I knew you were still in there." The doctor checked Frost's core temperature, and her expression softened. "His body is catching up," she said. "He is still weak, but that spark you are seeing right now, that is real." Frost shifted again, a tiny shake of his ears, then a shallow attempt to reposition himself. His strength faltered halfway through, and he slumped gently back onto the towel, a faint whine escaping him. Noah steadied him with a touch, light as breath. "You do not have to do everything at once," he murmured. Outside, the last frost melted completely, leaving the glass clear and open to the full light of the morning. A calmness filled the room, the kind that arrives after the most fragile battles have been fought and the first signs of victory begin to appear. Frost nestled into the warmth with a soft sigh, his body no longer bracing against cold or fear. Noah stayed beside him, breathing in the quiet, honoring the miracle unfolding inch by inch. Frost had not only survived the night. He had chosen life, with a small, trembling nudge into the hand that had carried him out of the darkness. The hours that followed unfolded with a quiet grace, as if the world itself understood the fragility of the small life reclaiming its place in the morning light. Frost rested more peacefully now, his breaths fuller, no longer the thin whispers of a fading heartbeat but gentle waves that rose and fell with purpose. The doctor stepped in and out of the room, each time checking vitals, each time allowing a faint smile to touch her face before leaving the Marine and the puppy in their shared silence. Noah stayed close, still seated beside the examination table, his posture relaxed for the first time since he had carried Frost in from the freezing dark. Every so often he would rest his hand near the puppy, giving Frost a familiar warmth to lean toward if he chose. Frost did choose. Slowly at first, nudging closer with small movements, then resting his head fully across Noah's fingers as if the weight alone anchored him to the waking world. The clinic's windows glowed brighter as the sun climbed, filling the room with a soft radiance that felt like a blessing easing its way across the floor. Dust particles drifted lazily through the light, moving as quietly as Frost's breaths. The doctor returned with a small bowl of warmed electrolyte broth, setting it near the table. "He might be strong enough to try a little," she said. "Just a sip or two." Noah waited, allowing Frost to sense the offering. The puppy's nose twitched, catching the scent. It took him time to lift his head, the effort visible in the tremble of his tiny muscles. Noah steadied the bowl without touching Frost, letting the little pup come to it in his own rhythm. Frost pushed his nose against the rim, then lapped once, twice, each sip careful but determined. The doctor watched with softened eyes. "That is a very good sign," she whispered. Noah nodded, grateful for every small victory. Frost took a few more sips, then rested again, exhausted but content. His body eased into the towels with a comfortable sigh. After a moment, he shifted his gaze upward, his amber eyes finding Noah once more. There was something clearer in them now, something awake, curious, and unmistakably alive. Noah felt a warmth spread through his chest, slow and grounding. "You are doing better," he murmured. Frost blinked, then made a small rumbling sound deep in his throat, not a cry but a quiet acknowledgement, the kind of noise a soul makes when it recognizes safety. The doctor stepped back, giving them room. "I think he knows who saved him," she said. Outside, the wind had softened to almost nothing, and the last traces of frost on the windows melted into thin rivulets that caught the morning light like threads of silver. Inside, a stillness settled, a peaceful one, no longer born of fear but of recovery. Frost shifted once more, curling slightly, then nudging the edge of Noah's hand with a soft insistence, as if claiming him in return. Noah let out a slow breath, steady and grateful. Something sacred had taken root between them, quiet but undeniable. Frost was not just surviving now. He was waking to the world with Noah beside him, step by fragile step, under a morning that seemed made for second chances. The morning stretched into a gentle stillness, as if the world understood it needed to move softly around the small life awakening on the examination table. Frost rested with his head still touching Noah's hand, his breath steady now, each one a quiet echo of the strength returning to him. The doctor had stepped out to fetch a portable warming nest, leaving Noah alone with the puppy in the warm hush of the clinic. Sunlight slid across the room, warming the floor tile and casting soft gold across Frost's fur. The little puppy blinked slowly, lifting his gaze toward Noah with an expression that held both curiosity and an old, aching tenderness, the kind that does not belong to fear but to recognition. Noah leaned closer. "You are doing better," he said quietly, not wanting to disturb the calm. Frost shifted, this time with more intention, stretching one small paw until it rested on Noah's wrist. The touch was light, almost weightless, but it sent a fragile warmth through Noah's chest, steadying him in a way he had not expected. The doctor returned carrying a small cushioned bed lined with warmed fabric. "He is stable enough to move into this," she said. "Soft, enclosed, good for puppies that need to rest without losing heat." Noah slid his hand gently beneath Frost's tiny body, lifting him with a care that felt instinctive. Frost relaxed into his palm, his breathing deep and even, trusting the motion. He settled into the warm nest, curling instinctively into the soft fabric, but his eyes stayed on Noah, following every slight movement. "He likes you," the doctor remarked with a small smile. "That kind of bond forms only when a life knows exactly who saw it through." Noah felt the quiet truth of her words, though he did not answer. Instead, he crouched beside the nest, resting his forearms on the counter, meeting Frost's gaze at eye level. Frost blinked, then let out a soft rumble, something low and reassuring, as if acknowledging the connection between them. His little ears twitched, and he shifted again, pushing his head against the side of the nest before lifting it enough to nuzzle Noah's fingers. Noah's voice dropped to a whisper. "I am not going anywhere." Frost's eyelids lowered, not in weakness but in contentment, like a child settling into safe arms. Outside, a soft breeze brushed against the melting frost on the windows, leaving streaks of clear glass open to the brightening sky. The doctor stepped out again, giving them space, her footsteps fading down the hallway. In the quiet that followed, Noah watched Frost breathing, watched the small body rise with life rather than struggle, watched the warmth return where the winter cold had nearly stolen everything. Frost nudged his paw forward again, finding Noah's hand with quiet certainty, curling his tiny toes over one of Noah's fingers. A fragile gesture. A vow of trust. Noah let out a breath he had carried through the entire night. Some part of him, a part he thought long numb, felt something loosen, something soften. Frost was not simply surviving now. He was reaching for a future, anchoring himself to the first warmth he had known in the darkness. And Noah, steady and silent, reached back, holding that tiny gesture as if it were the most sacred thing the morning had offered. The quiet inside the clinic deepened into something almost sacred as noon light pooled gently across the counter, turning the edges of Frost's little nest into a soft cradle of gold. He slept now, not out of weakness but out of the deep, healing exhaustion of a body finally allowed to rest without fear. His breaths were steady, filling the room with a rhythm that soothed even Noah's tired nerves. Noah stayed beside him, elbows resting on the counter, hands loosely folded, watching the small rise and fall of Frost's chest with a quiet that felt prayerful. The doctor returned briefly to check the monitors, her steps deliberate and light, as if honoring the stillness. She looked at Noah, then at the puppy. Curled in the nest. "He is stable," she said softly. "He made it through the worst of it." Noah nodded, absorbing the words slowly, letting them settle. Frost shifted in his sleep, stretching one paw outward before curling it again, his tiny toes brushing the edge of the warming fabric. The doctor smiled at the motion. "You know," she said, "puppies who come this close to the cold usually carry a kind of memory. They cling a little tighter to whoever was there when they woke." Noah glanced at her, then back at Frost. "I can understand that," he said quietly. The doctor left again, and the room returned to its gentle hush. Frost stirred, blinking awake with slow, heavy movements. His amber eyes opened just wide enough to find Noah sitting close. The puppy let out a soft hum, the kind of sound that held more emotion than volume, then pushed his nose forward, searching. Noah raised his hand, palm open, and Frost pressed his muzzle into it with surprising certainty. The warmth of the gesture moved through Noah like a slow tide, quiet and steady. Frost shifted his tiny body, attempting to sit upright. His limbs trembled with effort, but he managed to lift himself just enough to meet Noah's eyes. The expression on the pup's face was simple, wordless, but filled with something unmistakable: trust. Noah reached out, steadying the nest gently with one hand. Easy, he murmured. You have already done more than enough today. Frost leaned toward him, letting his small head rest against Noah's wrist as if the contact itself anchored him. Outside, the melting frost on the windows gave way completely, revealing a clear Montana sky streaked with soft blue and pale sunlight. The storm that had nearly taken Frost's life had passed, leaving behind a morning washed clean. Frost's breathing slowed again, not into weakness but into the comfort of a creature who knows he is safe. He curled into the nest, one paw still resting across Noah's hand, refusing to let go even as sleep tugged at him. Noah stayed there, unmoving, allowing the puppy's trust to settle deep into the quiet places of his heart. For a long moment, he simply watched the small life in front of him breathe. A truth formed gently in his mind, unspoken but clear as the afternoon light: faith does not always arrive as a miracle of thunder or flame. Sometimes it comes as a fragile heartbeat in the quiet, warming itself in a marine's hand, choosing life in the simplest, purest way. Frost exhaled, soft and content, and Noah bowed his head slightly, honoring the grace that had carried them both to this moment. Afternoon light drifted across the clinic like a quiet blessing, soft and warm, settling into every corner as if tenderly rewriting the cold memories of the night before. Frost slept deeply now, curled in the small warming nest with his tiny paw still draped over Noah's fingers, holding on even in dreams. His breaths came steady, the kind of steady that spoke not just of survival but of a life beginning again. Noah sat close, shoulders finally eased, a calm settling over him that he had not felt in a long while. The doctor stepped in one last time, her expression gentle as she checked Frost's vitals and adjusted the nest. He is going to make it, she said softly. Everything about him says he chose to stay. Noah nodded, his voice low. It feels like a miracle. The doctor smiled faintly. Miracles are quiet most of the time. People expect thunder, but they sound more like this. Frost shifted then, a small stirring of paws and whiskers, the soft rumble of a contented breath rolling through him. He blinked awake, his amber eyes clearer now, brighter, almost luminous in the afternoon glow. Noah leaned forward, resting his hand on the edge of the nest. Hey there, he whispered. Welcome back. Frost answered by lifting his head, wobbling slightly, then nudging his nose into Noah's palm with a certainty that carried the weight of gratitude too deep for words. Noah steadied him gently, feeling the warmth of the little body against his skin, a warmth that had been unthinkable just hours earlier beneath the frozen darkness of the abandoned gate. The doctor stood quietly by the door, watching the exchange with softened eyes. You know, she said, puppies remember the first warmth that saved them. It becomes their compass. Frost nosed Noah's thumb, letting out a soft, breathy sound that felt like the smallest echo of joy. Noah exhaled slowly, feeling something settle inside him, an ache lifting, a quiet filling its place. Then I will make sure he never has to look far, he said. Frost leaned his cheek against Noah's hand, eyes drifting half-closed, trusting the moment completely. Outside, the last of the melted frost cleared from the windows, revealing a sky brushed in soft blues and pale gold, the kind of sky that follows storms as if to remind the world that light still knows where to find it. Noah lifted the little nest carefully, cradling Frost close as he stood. Frost nestled into the curve of his hand, sighing into the warmth with the peace of someone who had finally reached safety. The doctor opened the door for him, her voice warm. Take him home, Sergeant. He is yours now, whether you planned it or not. Noah looked down at Frost, who blinked up at him with quiet certainty, as if confirming what the doctor had just said. A soft smile touched Noah's face. Yeah, he whispered. I think he knew that before I did. As they stepped into the gentle afternoon light, Frost curled deeper into Noah's arms, trusting the steady heartbeat beneath him. The air was crisp but no longer bitter, washed clean by the storm, carrying a hint of pine and the promise of a kinder night ahead. And in that quiet walk from the clinic to the waiting jeep, a truth settled over Noah with the clarity of sunlight warming cold earth: faith does not need proof to be real. Sometimes it is simply a tiny life choosing your hands to rest in, breathing softly against your chest, reminding you that grace often arrives on the smallest paws.